Hi there. This is Jaime Jorge from Codacy. I'm so excited to welcome you to our first inaugural AI Giants webinar. This is essentially a series that we created to bring together the leaders of the AI coding world, dive into common question challenges, and really shine a light how we can practically adopt amazing tools in the enterprise. At Codacy, we're building an end-to-end security platform that ensures safety from the moment the line of code is written by humans or AI. And so we're quite vested in this. The first of the series is Windsurf. Windsurf is a titan of the industry, synonym with a new wave of agentic coding tools, and they're expanding quite rapidly. Joining me today from the Windsurf team is Brian Smitches. Brian is Windsurf's very first partner deployed engineer, a role that he helps companies weave AI into their daily development workflows. Before jumping aboard Windsurf, Brian spent 4.5 years at Amazon Web Services, guiding US federal partners as solution architect. Brian, how are you doing? I'll love for you to introduce yourself in Windsurf.
Thanks, Jaime. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Smitches. I am a partner deployed engineer here at Windsurf. As Jaime mentioned, the first deployed engineer on our partnerships team, trying to work with all of our channel and technology partners to really figure out how Windsurf can be the best AI coding companion on the market. So when it comes to what my role here is at Windsurf, I get to be a field-facing engineer. My background, I have attended the University of Texas at Austin. I spent almost 5 years at AWS, and now I'm excited to be taking my skills obtained over software development, as well as my interactions with customers over the last several years of being in this space, working in regulated industries such as federal in the US. And we're excited to really talk about security and the age of agentic AI here today.
Fantastic. Great. Well, now let's jump to the actual questions that we have prepared for this panel today. We're also going to be launching a poll anytime. Let's do it now. To gather some engagement from all of you, and we'll present the results at the end. And so be sure to answer some of these questions that we prepared for you. We want to measure how you are using Windsurf. And we have answers already, which is great. Awesome. So let's start. First question that we have. One of the great promises of agentic coding tools is to greatly reduce development time. Assuming this promise holds, what risks do you think, Brian, companies face if they're not actively today evaluating agentic coding tools?
This is a very fascinating question because I come from a background in business. That's actually what my undergraduate degree is. And there's this notion in economics called opportunity cost, right? And quantifying opportunity cost is something that takes a lot of thinking to figure out what is the best case scenario that we're missing out on by choosing not to do something. And the active choice of not adopting is a choice, right? The inaction is an action, to say it shortly. So with our many customers and our many prospects, enterprises that are not even considering AI coding companions at this point in time, the inaction being the action they're choosing is just making it a longer burn on figuring out how to best use these tools in their specific environments. I think that it's a fascinating fact that you can take the same tool and apply them to different environments, and the value is vastly different depending on how people know how it integrates with their systems, with their processes, have the people enabled and ready to use to capitalize on this innovative material. And so that's where I think the biggest risk is for people who are choosing to delay or wait to figure out what is the best AI coding companion that will come out in the future. We have a clear history of Windsurf being able to meet and exceed expectations. We're pushing the edge of what's possible by raising the ceiling. And it's really not something that you only have to choose one of, right? Windsurf isn't solving the entire software development lifecycle. So when it comes to some of these more obvious questions of, am I able to add value in excess of the cost? That needs to be assessed very quickly so that you can start to use the tool, figure out how you use the tool. And then you figure out where else in your software development tool chain you need to be investing across your organization, the change management, to basically drive these larger scale initiatives to drive the value at large. So in sum, to answer your question, I would say like the cost of waiting is far in excess of the cost of experimenting today. So if you're not experimenting now, your voice is being left behind. We want to hear from you. We want to hear how we can help you build the best product that we can.
Yeah, that I think is an excellent answer. And just to double down on the idea that it's no coincidence change management is so difficult, right? And so getting early, starting small, if you will, but getting tools adopted, understanding them, getting really making the team aware of these excellent innovations is really the way to go. So I think the earlier you get experience with these tools, the better it is for you and organization. So fully agree with you. As a follow-up to that question and kind of benefiting a bit from our position here at Codacy, some of our customers are concerned about security, particularly security vulnerabilities introduced by coding agents, or, for example, having to correct bugs or code perceived to be introduced by AI systems. So how do we prevent this?
Yeah, I'm very pragmatic in my personal opinion on this, that I recognize that AI is not perfect. I think you'll be hard pressed to find anyone at Windsurf who claims any AI system on the planet is perfect. We know hallucinations exist. We know there's a possibility that training data is stale and contains pieces of vulnerabilities in it. So to build a robust mechanism for developing software alongside AI in these collaborative environments, you really do want to make sure you're supplementing your development practice with secure practices. Things like, how can I introduce application security scanning tools, right, for SAST or DAST? When it comes to specifically where I think that the future looks like for agentic software development and how we're making sure that things stay secure, there's also a question that's the opposite side of the coin, which is, what is the cost and risk of not adopting an AI tool such as Windsurf, or such as an extension that can help augment Windsurf, such as Codacy? And if you think that the velocity of software development is going to increase over time, probably the ability for vulnerabilities and exploitations to happen will also increase, which means that maybe old systems become more vulnerable because they're not being kept up to date, because they're not being maintained as efficiently. And so it becomes a thing where, how do we triage bugs efficiently? How can we get that time to remediation as minimal as possible? And if you're not using AI assistance in that workflow at some capacity, you're missing out on a large opportunity. So I think that it's a combination in some of, you're using AI to do what it understands. It can reason over code. It can identify certain like paradigm or design challenges that you might have. You collaborate with it to say, how can I improve this and remediate this problem? But you're also using these deterministic systems, things like code scanning tools, different integrations that Windsurf has with third-party softwares via model context protocol to surface up these bugs as they're being created or as they're being developed, and you're shifting that security left. Being able to keep everything inside of the IDE as the way you're iterating on this, as the way you're improving your security posture, the way you can now change what you're able to prioritize. You can now work so much faster with AI gains and efficiency, makes it possible to reduce your security vulnerabilities, in my opinion, actually. And I want to give you a second to give me your thoughts about that, Jaime, but I also want to maybe show the people in the audience what it looks like to use Windsurf and Codacy
That'd be
together.
great. Let's do it.
Just go right into it? Okay, sounds good. Let me share my screen. Give me one moment.
While you set it up, like this is exactly what we're seeing also from market. We as in Codacy, we're trying to shift left as much as possible and making sure that we're taking the best out of right now the smartest coding agents that exists exactly in tools like Windsurf. So I subscribe to exactly what you're saying. Let me not bother your demo. Please go ahead.
All right, sounds good. Let's get right into it. So fundamentally, if you've never seen Windsurf before, I'm not going to give you too much details other than it is a fork of Visual Studio Code, looks a lot like VS Code, things like your settings can be imported. But what you'll notice is that there's obviously extensions that come into what you have installed on your machine. And one of those extensions is specifically the Codacy extension. And just by, I actually have a free Codacy account, and out of the box, I'm able to get things like a local MCP server and a Codacy CLI. And so what this looks like inside of my application is I now have a .codacy directory with some configurations and the local command line tool that can help me with my security posture. So more specifically, you'll see some of these files are colored as red. And so I might also notice that there's this 32 number on the problems tab of my IDE. And if I want to investigate what's going on here, I can just hover my cursor over some of these problems and we can see some issues. So let me scroll down to one that I think is a little bit interesting right here. We detected some user input to manually construct a SQL string. The Codacy CLI using semgrep OSS is able to surface up, hey, there's this problem that's already in your existing code. So it doesn't even matter that you're capturing bugs or vulnerabilities that are during agentic software development, but just in your normal development lifecycle, whether it's already in existence from what you have inherited or whether AI is reviewing the code, this all goes to supplement how we're able to start to triage these problems. So another way that we might want to correct for these errors beyond just, and I'll show you very quickly, if I were to go ahead and want to fix this problem, I could simply go down here and click the explain and fix. And for the sake of time, I won't run this all the way to completion, but if I were to click this explain and fix, it will start to reason over with Windsurf using the Claude 3.7 Sonnet model, how to fix that problem. So we're starting to build these integrations, make it more efficient for people to work with these things. I'll go ahead and interrupt this process so I can go back to what I had previously in my conversation, which is also another work stream that people do. Having the ability to analyze your file with Codacy and obviously Cascade, which is our collaborative agentic assistant in Windsurf, builds this like best of both worlds. You're getting the ability to use these discrete tools, these deterministic tools with systematic approaches that say, hey, we're going to use that Codacy MCP server. We're going to use the tool that is analyze this file. We get all these outputs. That's a lot for me to read as a person. But if I just scroll a little bit down, you'll see that the AI can parse that. That's what's great about these semantic language models is they understand how to present information intuitively to a user. So now that I'm able to see, oh, I have some security issues, some SQL injection vulnerability, it's now up to me. Do I want to go manually fix these problems? Do I want to throw Cascade back into write mode so that Cascade can fix these problems on its own? And ultimately, we get to a point where, again, my hypothesis is that not adopting an AI technology actually increases your risk on your security posture. So I would much rather have the ability to keep a high velocity, surface up the right problems and errors as they're happening in development, shifting everything left. And I think that's about everything I want to show. Maybe one more thing to show you is that we can see Codacy CLI looking at some maybe bad package dependencies that are out of date or maybe should be used by another one. So just being able to surface up this context is super important. And then Windsurf does a great job with context management to do the things like going to this problems tab, being able to say, I want to send these to Cascade. And now looking at my current problems in app.py, I begin to triage. So with that, I'll just kind of conclude this. We continue the conversation, but Shaim, did you
This
want
is
to add
no, this
anything
is
at this point?
excellent. I just add that Windsurf has a unique capability that other IDEs don't have, which is the ability to create unique workflows they can then call by name. And that's something that we are also leveraging and find extremely powerful because you can create custom workflows also for yourself on particular, security tools or things that you want to be running. So I think this is an
Yeah,
excellent demo.
that's a great call out, and I do want to show you just very quickly. I did not write either of these Codacy workflows. Just by installing the Codacy extension, it came bundled in with, again, they know about Windsurf, they're integrated with Windsurf. They're trying to make it possible for you to be able to have a customization from the technology provider side of things. So specifically here, we can see what the fix issues workflow does. So this finds and fixes issues in your project using Codacy local analysis. It goes through some very rational chain of thought reasoning that the user has presented, or in this case, the service provider has authored this. You can modify it if you want. But being able to run the Codacy CLI, analyze tool, then if issues are found, start to fix them, is a very common work stream that if we just start to do that on app.py, we're going to be able to streamline this development process. Again, building the best of both worlds, having agentic AI capabilities with Cascade and Windsurf, but having the ability to use deterministic systematic approaches for surfacing these problems that might be in our code base.
This is an excellent demo. And obviously, we really subscribe to this idea of meeting the best of the non-deterministic agents with the best tools in order for us to build very secure software. So thank you for this. I want to switch gears. By the way, let me just pause for a second and say, if there's any questions, please do send. We have an open Q&A. We'll do our best to open up to answer questions at the end of this discussion. So I would love to answer any questions that you might have. Switching gears a bit, I want to ask, autonomous coding agents, hype or reality? Which parts of the software development lifecycle will still demand human judgment every time?
It's a hot button topic because there's a lot of different degrees of autonomy when it comes with these notions of autonomous agents. Windsurf has a position. We saw the original co-pilot experience where you're supplementing humans with some like autocomplete suggestions, right? Simple chat responses with single invocations. We get to these reasoning systems that start to build autonomous agent capabilities. But Windsurf has kind of pulled back the reins a little bit to say humans have an integral position inside of this process. And this collaborative surface is where we see the capabilities of AI being best utilized with humans to solve real world challenges, which is why the Windsurf application is so collaborative in nature, still the same IDE that you're normally working in. Also Windsurf has extensions into third-party IDEs. Our best supported suite of third-party editors are going to be the JetBrains plugins. But this notion that autonomous agents may be hype or reality, I think is really a spectrum. And we're starting to see agents be really good at doing small scope tasks or things that are very manageable very well, right? They can help people also get better understanding of their code, but that's more of a collaborative thing. That's not so autonomous on the AI. But then there are mechanisms that you can start to build as technology providers, such as ourselves, where you'll allow these reasoning models to talk to themselves, have a scratch pad. One of our features is planning mode, which allows you to essentially have a documented plan, some tasks on a checklist that allow it to kind of more systematically approach a medium length task, right? It's going to do A, then B, then C. It reasoned over what A, B, and C was first, and then it starts to execute on them, which is improving the quality on these agents to perform autonomously in some capacity. The thing is that people still bring their critical thinking to the table and they understand the real world constraints. People are responsible for understanding design thinking. They're understanding maybe what optimizations are most important because of things that are not embedded in context in the code base, or they're not embedded in the training data that have built these language models. So all to say, my personal opinion is that these AI systems will continue to get better and better. They will accelerate the software development process extremely significantly. Where Windsurf currently lives in the development environment is where we are at today. We're trying to expand, obviously, across the full SDLC as AI shows that it has value in these different adjacent spaces. But I don't believe that it's a risk of this year or even next year that we'll see these fully autonomous systems. I do think, though, that the way people work will look very different. We're starting to delegate more to AI agents. We're starting to figure out where that trust level is, where we can best utilize these systems by communicating our requirements well, being very comprehensive and thoughtful in our prompting and our planning. And so it will be very exciting to see where the future goes in terms of how these systems become a little bit more autonomous, but they will never be without human intervention in my perspective.
I fully agree. It seems like I'm agreeing with everything you're saying, but I really am agreeing with that point. And I think that there's this asymptote, there's this huge growth of excitement about autonomous coding agents, because I think people maybe dream of a scenario where they can just have coffee and software is built by itself, and then there's this fall and disillusionment with the reality of actually, no, software is hard and we just cannot click two buttons and get a fully blown amazing system done. And so I fully subscribe to the idea that full autonomy is not possible, at least in the short term. And I do believe also that the best tools to achieve that are the ones that work with the humans really closely, with the best design and the best developer experience. I think those will learn a lot to get to that point where it actually be an incremental evolution. So I think Windsurf
Yeah,
would probably be posed to do that.
and to go back to, I think, the first question you asked, which was about how do we, what is the risk of not evaluating and adopting these tools now? We are in a world where the capabilities of agentic AI are nowhere near the ceiling of their potential. And so I think it's good to flex that muscle, build a practice around knowing the limitations of it today in this earlier stage environment where there's more reliance on humans than there ever will be in the future, right? That allows you to figure out, what is AI good at? What is AI bad at? Where are the gaps that we need to invest and be prepared for the innovations that will happen on the AI domain to be able to capitalize as an organization. And so that's something that takes time, change management. So
Yeah.
in my opinion, like this all is kind of, it blends together. I agree the hype versus reality is a cool question to ask. I think the bigger concern is, are you ready for what the future holds? And that is definitely reality, right? There is no hype about the fact that technology is getting better every day, and we are seeing a rapid pace of innovation across the market.
Um, One common theme, both that we see from some of our customers, I'm sure that you see also from your customers at Windsurf, and I guess throughout the whole industry, is larger companies that have large software monoliths or systems that have been around for a long time without any need to call them legacy. How do we make them work using these new agentic tools? How do we make these tools work for those systems as well? Are there any first low friction entry points? Are there things that we can give them as tips? Because they want to go fast, they want to adopt. How do we help them?
Yeah, I think we have a lot of very very large complexity enterprise customers with monolithic code bases that are realizing significant value out of using Windsurf on those code bases. The fascinating approach for how you tackle more of a brownfield project versus a greenfield project is that there's more of a limited subset of tools available to you when you have an existing code base. A lot of these, going back to the autonomous agentic systems, can build out a 0 to 1 or part of the way greenfield application, but Windsurf started out as an infrastructure company optimizing GPUs, became Codium, which was for enterprise grade code bases to give autocomplete suggestions, really unlock the future potential of generative AI in the software development space, and has been pragmatic in the approach of, you know, context management is such a key problem to solve in this work stream that what tool you choose to use inside of these larger code bases, you'll start to see a very significant difference in the quality of suggestion and the ability to reason over large scale code bases. So where I see people having that adoption curve, saying, I want to use AI. I have a large complex code base. Where do I get started? The simplest answer, which is not going to be the biggest value, is to just use the Windsurf editor without knowing that, without changing any chat experience, without using Cascade, just in our passive experience. It's very fascinating when you're doing a software development process over a series of time, because Windsurf has the ability to understand your user trajectory, meaning the sequence of actions you take, what files you're opening and closing, what edits you're making, what's on your clipboard, your terminal command history. All this helps build a hypothesis and a derived intent of what your next logical work stream is. And so for those people, it's fascinating because they can just use the passive experience and get a very significant value gain from Windsurf tab. So just getting autocomplete suggestions or suggestions on how you move your cursor through your code base to reduce the low value keystrokes. That's one short answer as far as like just get the passive experience and pretend like you don't have an agentic assistant. When you want to use the agentic assistant on these large scale code bases, we see a lot of people just do code understanding, right? Hey, I'm a person. I have my task. I have no idea what's going on in my code base or where it might be. Can you, as my assistant, my collaborative pair programmer, essentially, help me figure out where I should look, what I should consider? So it's kind of guiding you. So you don't consider it as the human guiding the AI, you consider it more of the AI guiding the human. And that is another way that people are getting immediate gains on existing legacy large-scale code bases through
While
just code
getting confidence
understanding.
as well. Sorry to interrupt, but that also builds confidence as you're getting, oh, okay, this actually is truly understands the software that I'm building, right?
Exactly. It would be hard for someone who has never used an AI tool before to have that degree of trust that, hey, it's not hallucinating. So that's a great work stream to be able to say, I'm trying to keep the developer as the primary engineer, but the AI now is an assistant that's just kind of like what you would consider a Google or a Stack Overflow. It's just informing you of different information, surfacing up the right context. And the last thing I would say is your normal things that you're doing in large scale code bases, if you're trying to increase test coverage, if you're trying to increase documentation, those are common ways where you can have low hanging fruit on, we're going to allow the AI to write some code, but it's only going to be to improve test coverage. It's only going to be to improve documentation. It's not actually building features or triaging bugs, but that there's kind of that level of progression that I would encourage people to do. And it all, is serviced the same with Windsurf in our editor or in our plugins to like the JetBrains suite of editors.
I like the idea of breaking the mold that all of a sudden we have to get these agents coding all of our software at once with a click of a button. And I think that those steps of getting comfortable and dipping your toes in the water and making those tools, trusting those tools and seeing the results that they do, and then over time increase, right? Incrementally add more complexity to it as you feel more comfortable. I think that's really good advice. Um, I think on the other side of things, we also have um, companies that are more concerned about regulation and compliance, either because they operate in highly regulated industries or because they serve customers that have high criteria for IP protection and data protection as well, data privacy. I want to surface evidence that you have that you can share that Windsurf has the right and proper posture to serve these customers.
Yeah, that's actually a great situation that all of our enterprises have to cross that point of evaluation, saying how capable are these AI products for being used in my environment. When it comes to actual IP indemnification, we have a best-in-class way of indemnifying, if there was an infringement on intellectual property, we have some liability coverage there for that. But more fundamentally than that, I think people are concerned about the security of what they consider their intellectual property being misused by the AI tools. And so we have paid tiers of our product. Of course, we also have a free tier of our product. And in the higher tiers of Windsurf, we do not train on data. It's zero data retention, right? We have enterprise agreements with our sub processors who are servicing these models available to our users. And that sounds nice. Again, for a lot of security conscious organizations, they just need that reassurance. But when you go into the regulated industries, the people who have compliance requirements, whether it's us achieving a certification, such as our SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, whether it's us actually being able to build multiple deployments of Windsurf. We actually have a separate partition of our services that runs in a FedRAMP SaaS compatible environment. So FedRAMP High, people who need to achieve that, for those of you who may not know what it is, the Federal Risk Authorization Management Program in the United States is essentially a way to make sure that we do compliance at scale and risk management at scale across all the agencies in the federal government. But by assessing how much risk we are willing to tolerate, we say, is this system a moderate risk or a high risk environment? And Windsurf, in about 4 months' time from starting on this path to being able to actually have it available for consumers to onboard into, which is a very accelerated timeline, we built that FedRAMP High SaaS deployment and started onboarding customers. And even, I know you're over there in Portugal. In the EU, we actually hear a lot of people say, we can't have our data. I mean, we could have our data that meets GDPR compliance requirements, go to the US, but it's actually so much paperwork. We'd rather just have that reassurance that we stay within the EU for all processing and storage. And that's where Windsurf has its guarantees that through our EU deployment, you can have that assurance. So all to say, there's a lot of things that take a long time to build out. I don't know if anyone else actually has a FedRAMP High SaaS. I don't believe so, nor an EU specific deployment to make those guarantees to these customers in regulated industries. But Windsurf is committed to being able to service all software developers around the world in the ways that are possible. So there's one small additional data point I do want to call out, which is that if you go on our website, it's available publicly. One of our public customers is JP Morgan Chase. And I think I would be hard pressed to find someone who says they're not one of the most regulated industries in the world, right? Managing assets at that scale is a big deal, right? When it comes to compliance and regulation. So if JP Morgan Chase can use our product, our design is obviously secure. We have made these investments. We encourage you all to start to evaluate our tool, think about how security tools in the other parts of the SDLC or things that supplement Windsurf, such as Codacy, can really help you bring security into the age of agentic software development.
It's super reassuring to hear this, especially because as we've been discussing with many customers, they're looking to adopt agentic tools in their software development lifecycle. Having these guarantees and having this experience working with such incredible customers, I think that de-risks the adoption and helps people take those baby steps and getting those POCs and then eventually adopt at scale. I can only imagine what will happen in the next few years if I think about it, because most companies are starting to do that, right? This is excellent. And I think one final question for me before we open up to the Q&A. By the way, it will be great to have your questions. Already have a few really good ones. I took already glanced at a few. With the market exploding with AI software development tools, how do you distinguish best in class? And so in other words, what makes Windsurf different?
Yeah. We've touched on a couple of these holistic differentiators from the beginning. I think, Windsurf was originally designed for the enterprise. We have an infrastructure background, which allowed us to solve some things that are very infrastructure challenges, where the local index of embeddings lives, the fact that it's on your local machine rather than in the cloud, that derivation of code snippets is, we don't want to retain that. That's a design pattern that, coming from an infrastructure background, we were able to solve. Being able to say that we have these different deployment models to meet your needs. We even have, for our largest customers, a single tenancy option. In terms of how holistic differentiators happen, I think a lot of these products are very capable. And that's very clear. It's about, are they secure? Are they uh, generating high quality suggestions? You know, if you're not getting a quality output, it's not worth your investment and your time. And so part of that has to do with enablement. And Windsurf is very committed to not just throwing a product over a wall for our customers. We do have a very white glove process. That's actually part of the reason why we were having such scaling problems, why we started to invest in our partnership channel so much, is that we know that solving these problems are more than just adopting a tool. So we want people to know how to use the tool very well, yes, but our partners, whether they're services partners or people who have different consulting experiences and change management, they're able to go on top of what our product is and further drive that transformation change. And we are very pragmatic to understand, this tool doesn't solve all your problems, but it's a very large part of the solution. And so Windsurf doesn't claim we're not trying to shoot. We are trying to shoot for the moon, but we're not trying to sell the moon today. We're trying to solve today's problems. We're trying to build the best quality suggestions as possible, increase the ceiling of capabilities. Every time we make a new release, these capabilities are things the world has never seen before. So that's fascinating. So our pace of innovation, our security posture, our presence, and our accessibility, the ability to support people in JetBrains editors, which is such a large set of the development community around the world with a high quality product. It's just, there's so many different facets of this question that I could go down for a long time, but just fundamentally, it's, are you a good product? Are you able to be used? And are you really pragmatic about how AI should be used and what other necessary investments customers should be making to have success with your product?
Yeah. We've been obviously spending some time with Windsurf, especially to deepen our integration here at Codacy. And one of the things that strikes me, especially as we've been kind of discussing, is that you guys are focused on solving the challenges and problems of today to make sure that these companies are really enabled to use AI to code, right? You guys are not thinking about theoretical academic exercises. You're just actually, keeping your heads down and solving problems for companies. And that's, I think, really, frankly, really aligns with how we also see the world here at Codacy. We're just trying to help companies do their amazing jobs, right?
Yeah, and reduce friction in that process, right? It's work is hard enough. We're not trying to make it any harder. We're trying to make it easier. We don't want you to feel lack of trust. So that's why everything we build is collaborative and pragmatic and what capabilities are today. We're excited to see where the world takes our product. We've seen some people build some really neat things with it, drive a lot of large transformations, being able to unlock the shackles of like a technical debt that they may have not been able to invest in before. So yeah, very excited to see what the future holds. And then I'd love to answer any questions with the remaining time that we have.
Let's do it. Let's open up the webinar to start asking a few questions from the audience. We have 3, so feel free to ask a few more questions either in the chat or here in the Q&A. Let's start with the first one from Doug. I think this one is specific for Codacy. How can you manage configuration on the Codacy CLI so that you can local scan is exactly the same as your remote scan, preventing the case where you have a clean scan locally where PR shows issues due to config difference? So this is obviously specific to Codacy. The way to go is when you have your Codacy account with your org set up and your repo set up, and you define your standards there, then your local CLI will, if connected and logged in to your account, will feed on those results and adjust the configuration of your local tools. So any tools that you use, either the ones that we integrate or our own, will have the configuration centralized with your coding standards. Happy to help out in this process. We'd be happy to do that. And so we do that, for example, with Windsurf. When you install the CLI, if you have logged into your Codacy account and that repo is registered with us, then you're going to be able to get those configurations locally. Another question that we have from anonymous attendee, I'm going to read out because I think is a good one. My biggest hurdle is getting customers comfortable with how AI models handle their code and data. They want clear, simple documentation from the vendor side and visibility into what data leaves the network and how it's processed and what comes back. Without this transparency, it's tough to get buy-in from installing solutions like Windsurf with Codacy. Any tips or resources to help explain this to customers would be a huge help. What would we say to this?
Yeah, we at Windsurf are very committed to being transparent with our customers. That being said, certain things we only want to share under NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. So if you are not already engaged with us, we have field-facing engineers who, like myself, are meant to help demystify that, help you get a richer understanding. We don't want to just give you a diagram and have that be misconstrued. We want to talk you through it. That being said, we do have windsurf.com/security, where we go through a lot of the different considerations as far as, how does this work with subcontractors and sub-processors? The fact that we know there's multiple pieces of the AI system, and Windsurf is being the integration layer for all of this. How do we make sure that we're secure as everything is being processed, that there's no data retained, and it does come down to ultimately, like, are you in the right tier of our product? Because for our free users, we have to have some way to be able to subsidize their service. So definitely going into the paid services where you can get those security assurances. And if you want to get under an MSA with us, that all also disambiguates some of that process. So the short answer is you have to have a little bit of trust in the people who have come before you and adopted these tools. There's a reason that Windsurf is growing at such a rapid clip in even regulated industries. And now it's just about demystifying that. So engaging us when you have specific questions or you want a deeper understanding is probably the best way to do that.
Excellent. A next question from Doug. With those light touch approaches to integration of Windsurf, how can we show a high ROI for the cost of the tooling?
So let me repeat the question and tell me if I heard you correctly. The question is, how do we quantify that the cost of these tools is worth the investment?
Especially with the approach that we've been describing here today, which is taking those baby steps into the tool, starting with explanation of code and starting with POCs and getting your toes in the water. That obviously vis-a-vis the ROI that you want to show might go against those ideas, right? I think, yeah, it's a good question.
A very significant part of our sales motion is making sure that you have adequate data to substantiate the value proposition. And so part of that means that we do an evaluation trial period, right? A proof of value, if you will, to say, show me, don't tell me that you're valuable. And the reality of it is that, again, going back to customer success is dependent upon how you use the tool, and being enabled is a big part of that. We either through ourselves, we do kickoffs with our engagements who are our customers who are going through these proof of values, and our proof of values, we want as many people to test the tool, see if they like it. So we do a lot of these free of charge, right? So it's just a matter of, again, engaging us. And so I think that that's something that I want to also put in the chat before the end of the call here is, if you want to reach out to Windsurf, my counterpart, Neil Spalding, is happy to help get conversations started, right? Of how do we kick off an evaluation period? We want to look at the tool. We want to experiment with it. We want to not be prohibited from cost. And then in that period of time, you're saying, what business objectives, what value drivers are we trying to quantify against? It's also good to note that there are tools in this space that are specifically designed to help you account for how much velocity maybe you're increasing or how much code quality is changing with the increase in velocity. So I encourage you also to look at some of the DORA metrics available to you. Some popular tools that we hear our customers talking about is, Jellyfish, GetDX, Harness, SEI. All these different systems are essentially in existence to help you quantify and build that business case of why the investment is worth the cost.
Yeah, I would maybe complement saying that from what we've seen, developers using it and being excited is such a driving force also, because Even if from the opposite side you already had confirmation of higher ROI, but then developers didn't want to use, you had a different problem. So given that the experience is such a differentiator, I think many times the getting the development excitement and making them just go fast and feeling fast, I think is such a power to be had. So great question. Thank you, Doug. We had another question here from Claudia. Do you see a difference between how different types of companies, examples, industries or size, are better or worse equipped to adopt agentic workflows?
So I didn't get to go into it too much, but you saw the Codacy workflow, which is what we call a customization atop our product. Um, the very fascinating thing is that I don't actually have the ability to convey to you this clearly, other than you have to try it for yourself, that Windsurf is such a flexible tool because it's a complex tool that's very adaptable to whatever you try to do in your work streams, that we have people using it in design use cases, which is like not what you would imagine to be the target use case. We have people who have never written software in their lives using this product to help manage a project they manage, or because of their domain expertise, they are building prototypes to try to convey their message. We think that in the future, everyone will be a builder, and we just need to build the tool to help people dream bigger, right? So when it comes to accelerating the software development process by 99% as our mission statement, it's essentially, I would say, is software development or is building solutions to problems by things that you own, right? Code that you own. If that is a part of what your mission is and what you're trying to accomplish, then you'd be well positioned and well suited to use Windsurf. It just, you would use it in very different ways. And so that's where it becomes so critical that you engage with us. We talk about it. Our partners also have this expertise to be able to say, how do we use these tools to the best of our abilities in this specific industry with this specific existing code base, with these technical initiatives or business initiatives. So I don't want to give you an overly prescriptive answer, but if you have software developers, that's a pretty good proxy metric to say you would get value out of this tool.
One final question from our audience, and still there's time for a few more if you want. Thoughts on AI-powered code reviews versus deterministic ones like Codacy? And I have a pretty strong opinion about this one, because I think that there's space and time. There's essentially some of the best coding agents are being developed as we speak. Windsurf is one of them, right? So everything that Windsurf is building is becoming the best code fixer, the best code understanding. I think there's layers and layers of value being created within Windsurf. I think what we're trying to provide with Codacy is to enhance that process with deterministic layers and tools and results so that we do even better fixing, right? And so tools that just do AI-powered code reviews, or companies that do that, are not truly, in my view, competition, or not a solution to what we see, because we see determinism as being the great enhancer of the AI world. And that's essentially it. So we're very excited and motivated to work with tools like Windsurf, because we think that that's the best combination, as opposed to other competitors that just add more AI or other, sometimes even the same models to what we're seeing. So yeah, our strong opinion is that using deterministic tools will augment the experience and create trust and security, so that the many steps that Brian mentioned in the past will be taken and higher ROI unlocked. I don't know if you agree with me, Brian, but that's our view of the world.
Yeah, and it looks like my camera cable disconnected, so I'll just
Still looks
continue
great.
with. Yeah, thank you. The only piece that I have to add is that, yes, your question is almost a question about this design approach with retrieval augmented generation. In the generative AI world, AI is really good at training data and being able to generate new tokens, right? The next logical probabilistic output, and those will continue to get better, and their context management will continue to get more robust. The fascinating thing, though, is that we still see so many enterprises investing in knowledge base systems, sophisticated knowledge-based systems to be able to surface up context to feed into the AI. And so it does become a yes and, right? You can have AI-powered code reviews and use a security scanning tool to be able to figure out what information goes as input and supplement to your source code itself. So it's source code plus analysis report into language model might create something that's actionable. And I think that is probably where the future goes. It's going to be a consolidation and aggregation of all these different tools that have their discrete lanes to reside within.
One final question from Manish Kumar, where he asks, how does AI-based code review compare to peer review in agile teams? You wanna
Yeah, I would
take it?
say experience varies, right? We have introduced Windsurf reviews in beta. It is available as an application in your GitHub organization where the bot will start to respond to you. It is a balance of how much you want it to surface because everyone has different standards they're trying to respond to or things that they would identify. We don't want to make something that's too noisy in a bot, so we try to focus on more of the bigger challenges that we identify in your code, but definitely still like that you can going back to the this plus that, maybe the AI generated code review is a starting point for the human code review so that the person picks up where the AI left off. Yes, let me see this. No, that's a false positive. Let's just dismiss that and continue on. So I would say that whole work stream still will be a collaborative in nature. It's about, do you want a machine helping you do that faster, or do you want to rely on your expertise of your people to answer that question?
Brilliant. Well, with this, we're on time. Also, no more questions. So, I'm super excited about what just happened. I think the conversation was very interesting. Thank you all for joining us on a Friday. And especially thank you, Brian, for accepting our invitation. I'm going to share the results from the survey that we just had, and they really just show what we already suspected, but it's great to have the data, which is people want to try Windsurf, and that's one of the reasons why we're here is because we already had that data point from many of our customers. Today we try to answer pretty hard questions, so kudos to Brian to take on some of these hard questions and try to help you reframe some of the main challenges that you're going through as you adopt AI in your software development lifecycle. So we will hope that you join us next time as we explore with AI giants how they're changing the world. If you're interested in learning more about Windsurf, we have already some contacts. We'll follow up with you also with some contacts so you can engage. If you're interested in engaging with us at Codacy, obviously you know our channels. And thank you. Thank you for Brian for being here.
Thank you, Jaime, for having me. It was great talking.
Wonderful.
Thanks all for joining.
Have a great weekend, everyone.